Good morning, good morning, good morning again, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do, the usual disclaimers. And like I said, I'm going to have a nice, probably long video of just straight out rants to get it out of my system. We're going to start separating those videos out. God, what is free time? Oh, yeah, that's what everybody else has, and I don't. Right. Let's get to it, shall we? In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non for profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much, they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Well, folks, NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read the article and share it on all your social media. Also included in there is NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding in case the JRC actually sees through with their threat. Also included in there is the Ozarks' first article in regards to Agape Boarding School, also known as Stone for Help boarding school situation, a so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has impending over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services, and they include the following: sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another a doctor, still on the premises with full access to the boys up on multiple, again, substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault of the boys there. You have an attorney general too busy chasing after and badly photoshopping drag queens and trying and failing to defund public libraries to actually do his job. And you got a governor off of his MAGA nut. So please send help. Send help. Send help. Read that article. Share it on all your social media. We got the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign as well, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, a clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002, the templates, and the ever present and very self explanatory Change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips or surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you do got young children present, folks, please go ahead and use those headphones, all right? All right, trigger warning. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they're watching this, very obviously parental supervision is very much advised, all right? All right, short little anecdote. So when I'm not playing the doll, folks, this is generally what I look like. In case you're wondering if I care about what I look like, I don't. No, this is what I look like on a general work day. I took today off, of course, because bank. And yeah, I can take forever on the bus. Just saying. You better plan for 3 hours to get to and 3 hours to get back. Yeah, bus system. So let's get to it, shall we? We're going to read through the article here. All right. The second federal law that has been proposed is the Stop the Child Abuse in Residential Programs for Teens Act of 2011. This law, as its title suggests, would specifically address the treatment of youth in private residential programs, including special education settings. It also targets folks, although it's not being said here, and we do have NAMI working with us on this, those troubled teen industry schools as well. See, we don't just advocate for ourselves, we advocate for those who are also a part of the mental health community. Because we are tired of seeing it, folks. They all play from the same playbook, Agape, JRC, and for some reason, all of them have this weird hatred for Harry Potter. That's its own topic. Let's move on, shall we? It places absolute prohibitions on deprivation-based aversives and any acts of physical or mental abuse designed to humiliate, degrade, or undermine a child's self-respect. This targets JRC and the troubled teen industry in particular. Let's go over some examples. In regards to the JRC, this is not just targeting the GED device, it's also targeting those bizarre behavioral rehearsal lessons. For those who aren't familiar, what the behavioral rehearsal lessons essentially are is a random staff member jumping out at a student out of nowhere, grabbing them by the shirt collar, slamming them into a wall, and threatening them with something. In particular, there was one famous case where a student was threatened with a knife. A butter knife, mind you, but yeah, you get my point here. And the person's screaming in this kid's face, "Do you want to eat it? Do you want to eat it?" Now, what is the purpose of this? Well, if we go off of Dr. Matthew Israel's bizarre logic, it's this these lessons are used in particular for those who have so-called dangerous behaviors that don't show up very often. So they're doing this in order to provoke the particular behavior that they want the person to display so that they can then punish the student for said behavior to convince them that it's wrong. And on the flip side, if the student refuses to give in and does not go into the behavior, well, they get punished for noncompliance. If it sounds psycho, it's because it's psycho. In regards to places like Agape and the troubled teen industry, this is an entire industry, folks, that is basically built on to humiliate and degrade and undermine a child's self-respect. It goes off of a weird hybrid child of the JRC bizarre behavioral rehearsal lessons with a mixture of Army, Navy, you name it, boot camp. Okay? They go out of their ways to do exactly this. It's this bizarre idea of tough love, which we've already discussed on this channel, does not have the effect that they want to tell you that it does. Scare them straight, they say. How'd that work in the 90s? I'll tell you how it worked. It didn't. It actually made those risky, dangerous, reckless behaviors worse. But we live in an age where nobody likes to learn from history, so this is why things like this have to be done. Okay? Moving on. It goes to limit the use of restraint and seclusion to that provided for under federal laws for other types of faculty that allow it only when used by trained staff in order to protect a student or other less restriction interventions have failed. It contains some parental notification and training requirements, though framed differently from those in other laws. Namely, they focus more on reporting instances of child abuse and teaching staff members to recognize and respond to it than on doing so with regards to the use of aversives in general. So this law would require if things are shady, if there's some actual abuse going on, this law acts basically making all staff mandatory reporters. So no pulling what the JRC does and using one guy to be the scapegoat. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Namely, they focus on reporting instances of child abuse, blah. We already went over that. Finally, it imposes a requirement that children in such programs have reasonable access to a telephone in order to report abuse and neglect to state authorities. Now, the JRC will tell you, but we already do this. They can call their parents anytime. But if you remember from Jennifer Masamba's blogs, there is always a staff member about 3 feet back listening and reporting on every single word uttered over the phone. The parents will be gotten a hold of, and they are going to be told to ignore what the child is saying. Some parents, unfortunately, do exactly that. I think in this particular law, we need further language to be placed in there that they have access to that telephone without staff being able to use intimidation tactics or even being present while said student is using the telephone. Like the Keeping All Students Safe Act, this law would not establish a private right of action for the purposes of enforcement. Instead, it allows for the imposition of civil penalties through the Department of Health and Human Services and for the U.S. Attorney General to seek equitable or other relief through the courts under its provisions. It allows the former to conduct investigations and disseminate information on child abuse and neglect in individual private residential programs. So, in regards to places like the JRC, who has somehow managed all these years to continue to evade a federal investigation, this would get rid of all of that, folks. It means, regardless of what your state says, and we know how corrupted the state of Massachusetts is when it comes to the JRC in particular, it means you can have the consent decree all you want to. You can say, but my state says it's legal, so it's safe, all you want to. But it's not going to matter. If you're not following this particular law that we're trying to get to pass, if there is, as in the language of my state, I have stated before, reasonable cause for concern, that means the Attorney General has the right to order a federal investigation into your program. Yeah, when I said we're not mincing words, we're not playing games no more. This is exactly what I mean, folks. This is exactly what we mean. We're going to go ahead and close on that. But before we do, Photobomb Cat wants to photobomb. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'm going to do the last final front load for today. Probably much later is when I'm going to be doing my rant video. So look out for that. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.